Good morning, everyone, and a very, very warm welcome to the launch of the virtual boot camp on emerging careers by Deakin University, in association with our wonderful host schools right across India. Tagore International School, Shiv Nada School, Chitkara International School, JBCN International School, Vibio International School, Trio World Academy. Thank you so much to my host schools for helping us organize this wonderful virtual boot camp for our students. Thank you to the principals, teachers, and counselors, and to my wonderful team for working so hard to put this event together. At the onset, my dear friends, let me take this opportunity to honor all the teachers and wish all the teachers a very, very happy Teachers' Day, and everyone in the education fraternity on the occasion of Teachers' Day. It is indeed important that we are launching this initiative for 2020 on this day to celebrate how teachers contribute to the future of their students and their success. A huge round of applause, virtual applause, for all our teachers. We are living in this very challenging times, and I hope and pray that each one of us is safe and keeping well. And I think in this current situation, doing the best that we can do for ourselves and for each other. In 2018 and 2019, Deakin University hosted a series of emerging careers studios in collaboration with schools right across Delhi, NCR, and Chandigarh. The Deakin University studios witnessed healthy and fruitful interaction between Deakin faculty and students. Students were apprised about new areas of study and emerging career pathways alongside experiential learning. Even in these unprecedented times and challenging times, Deakin University, in the top 1% of world universities, is committed to giving a similar experience to students right across India. On the occasion of Teachers' Day, we take immense pride in now launching the virtual boot camp for emerging careers 2020. With the focus shifting to holistic learning and the need for students to make sure that they are in tune with where the world is going, it is important to think about some of the new careers which you can see on the screen as well. So right from psychology to artificial intelligence, exercise, sports science, and also international relations, to name a few. We will have Deakin faculty working with students in these boot camps to give them an understanding about what they need to do and how these areas give them a chance to have careers for the future. The boot camps will be conducted in 8 cities as per the schedule mentioned in the screen right in front of you. If you or your school would like to register, please call my colleague or email at southasia@deakin.edu.au. You've got the details on the screen. With the pace of change accelerating in the 21st century, a key recruitment drive is lifelong learning and the ability to acquire new skills. How can learning to learn and the ability to continually reinventing oneself be fostered in children at a young age? It starts with recognition amongst all educators that the world is changing. To prepare people for the future, you need to design an education system that is forward-looking and not backward-looking. And I don't know how many of you have had the chance to read the new education policy, but that's what the new education policy in India is really, really focusing on. We need to completely reimagine education. Instead of learning to memorize facts and figures, students need to learn how to learn and how to solve problems of today and tomorrow. And they should be allowed to learn independently, cohesively, and in teams. Changes are needed at every level. You have to infuse things like entrepreneurship into the curriculum because with the disruption that's going on, many people are going to have to create jobs, not necessarily get jobs in companies. So Australia is currently the third most popular destination for international students. Some may argue it is second, but I really think that it is somewhere between second and third in the English-speaking world, just next to the UK and the United States. Many international students choose to study there because of the cultural diversity, friendly natives, and the very high quality of education. And I was just talking to my colleague Brett, and we agree, the beautiful lifestyle. Today, we have the most accomplished people in this room with us to help us understand Australia and its education landscape in general, and of course, Deakin University. Let me start, colleagues, by introducing our guest of honor today, Mr. Brett Gal-Smith from the Australian High Commission in India. Brett took up the role of Counselor, Education and Research for South Asia in December 2019, based at the Australian High Commission, New Delhi. Brett has worked in a diverse range of areas, including international education policy, regulation, longitudinal study of Indigenous children, international and Commonwealth state relations, the repatriation of Indigenous Australian human remains from overseas collecting institutions, and was a research director of the Strelov Research Center in Alice Springs. Thank you, Brett, for joining us. Our next panelist is Kerry Bretson. Kerry Bretson is Associate Dean Quality Standards and Accreditation and an Associate Professor Marketing in the Faculty of Business and Law, as well as the past Associate Dean Teaching and Learning, Director of Undergrad Programs, and Course Director of the Bachelor of Commerce and the Bachelor of Business at Deakin University. Kerry has a doctorate from Monash University, was on the Investigating Brand Orientation within Retail Organizations. Thank you, Kerry, for being with us today. And of course, we have our student, Gautam. Gautam is studying Bachelor of Exercise and Sports Science on our Cloud campus, and he will be sharing his experiences later as we speak. So now there's a poll question, I think, before I move on to Brett. There is a poll question that is on your screens. And the question is Australia your preferred destination of choice for higher education? All right, that was a simple question. We don't need more time to answer that. Let's move on. I'm going to now request my friend and colleague, Brett, to reflect on Australian education opportunities it offers and his views on this virtual boot camp that Deakin's organized. Over to you, Brett.
Thank you very much, Ravneet. Namaste, everybody. It's really a privilege to be speaking to everybody today, and I want to especially say it's lovely to be sharing the same event as Gautam as well. We don't always get to interact with students when we're making policy in Canberra, where I am at the moment, so that's quite the privilege. Yeah, look, thank you very much, Ravneet. I guess hello from Australia, and I would normally be at the Australian High Commission in New Delhi, and hello from everybody at the High Commission. The times we're in the middle of COVID-19 in Australia, and of course you don't need to be reminded in India as well. COVID-19 is really, I think my observation is it's just accelerated a whole range of technologies, a whole range of interacting, and it suddenly points to some of the future careers, as Ravneet has alluded to, artificial intelligence, cybersecurity. We're seeing all of this play out in the bigger geopolitical sphere across the world at the moment. International relations are incredibly important at the moment. You know, in lockdown, even Ravneet, you referred to exercise before. Even in lockdown, exercise is incredibly important. There are, and of course, people's mental health. It's incredibly serious, and I think that this COVID-19 period that we're in has shown us some of these really critical careers and pathways of the future. I want to say that for students who want to study, are thinking of studying in Australia, look, I do believe Australia is a wonderful country. I don't want to say it's better than anywhere else because I love India. I wish I was back in New Delhi at the moment. But Australia is a wonderful place to study. It's a very free country. I'm not saying that for students who are here in Australia at the moment, Indian students, for example, who can't return back to India, you know, they're doing it pretty tough at the moment. There's lots of supports that we're putting in place for students. But I want to say that Australia is a very free country. It's a place where you can learn all sorts of soft skills. You work very independently, particularly if you're away from your families. You work independently and learn time management. Networking amongst fellow students is really critical. You learn collaboration, you learn conflict resolution, you learn lots of creative thinking when you're living and studying independently. But having said that you're living and studying independently, for students in India, coming to Australia, Australia has what we call the diaspora, the Indian community in Australia, and both people who are born in India or who have some very strong family connections in Australia. It's about 700,000. So you're not alone in Australia if you decide to come and study here. Indian diaspora makes up about 2 or 3% of the Australian population. Australia also has a philosophy of lifelong learning, which plays into what Ravneet was talking about in terms of the new national education policy. We believe in, to put it crudely, education from the cradle to the grave, from lifelong learning. It's never too late to be learning. And in fact, the careers of the future, you won't be in the same job for 10 years and you need to stay mobile and continue to learn, and that's really critical. Look, that's probably enough for me. I know I'm going to be asked some questions later on, but I want to thank you all again. It's a real privilege to be able to welcome you all to this Future Careers Boot Camp, and thank you very much, Deacon, for putting it on today.
Thank you very much, Brett, for your encouraging words. And my association with Australia is about 25 years old, and I can say with the hand on my heart that it is a beautiful country with beautiful people, and a very, very safe destination for students to study and live, actually. So thank you very much, Brett. We have another poll question now before we get Kerry to speak. Would you like to participate in sessions like this in the future, or in your preferred area of study? All right, thank you very much for your response. I'm going to now request Kerry to share her thoughts on career of the future.
Thank you, Ravneet. And thank you, Brett, for a great introduction to some of the environment that students can find themselves in coming to Australia. What I want to talk to you about when we think about careers of the future, and it doesn't matter if I'm talking to students in Nepal or India or in Melbourne or across the world, there's so much to be learned from the past as well as what's predicted for the future. So if we look back at the first industrial revolution, when steam engines took hold of the world and we saw this plethora of new opportunities and careers emerge out of what was a highly innovative time in our history. When we got to the second revolution in the, I suppose, early 20th century, so much of mass production and that whole production orientation that took place across the manufacturing sector was really an incredible opportunity to change and pivot in careers. And what we found was people didn't have to reinvent their roles, but they had to be able to have some flexibility to reinvent which sectors they may work in. By the third industrial revolution, which we now call the computer or internet-based knowledge revolution, so much of those early times of cloud learning, of understanding how we can harness IT and integrated electronic analytics came to play. The Internet of Things started in the third industrial revolution. And we saw that time that so many people who had very traditional backgrounds and degrees still had a role and a place to find careers of that time. We're now in the fourth industrial revolution. It is one of the most challenging times, and I think we can all agree that had we been speaking a year ago when I was in India, we wouldn't have been able to predict what today looked like in India or across the globe. But we are looking at the opportunities rather than just what has been lost or the challenges that are currently underway. So much is about how we can reconnect with each other, how we can use technology to our advantage to build relationships and networks. And it is around how we kind of meet applications in the world. So while we do see in the media quite an extensive discussion on jobs disappearing and this fear and I suppose a deficit model of discussing careers and employment prospects. And when you're in the senior years of secondary school, it can seem quite daunting to try and work out, where should I go? What careers are the best investment? And it's the first taste really of recognizing that education is an investment in yourself and your family and the future. I have a child entering senior years, and it's challenging for every parent, but also challenging for students to think, well, what do I want to be? Where can I go? What's the right decision? When 40% of roles are considered to be disappearing in the next decade. Now, that doesn't mean that the skills and professional backgrounds that we have today will disappear, but maybe the titles or the role itself may change and pivot as the world moves on. But just as jobs are disappearing, we're seeing this emergence of new opportunities, and it's such an exciting time and place. Last year, I predicted that by 2020, we would see 92% of all new exciting careers would be in the services sector. Now, that hasn't changed, but what has changed is COVID-19. And I thought Brett's point that trends that we identified in the career market and the employment market more broadly were already evident a year ago. They've just accelerated with COVID-19. You're not seeing a massive shift in any particular direction, but we are seeing an acceleration. And with that acceleration, you can be glass half empty and think quite negatively, or you can actually adopt a resilient attitude of what are the opportunities that come from this. Never in a million years would I have thought that I would be spending the last 6 months working from my home environment. I'm quite a social person, and those transferable interactive skills with others is something I thrive on. And employers are saying that 2/3 of jobs require those soft skills, those transferable skills. These aren't just discipline knowledge in accounting or engineering. It is how you understand yourself, how you understand organizations, and how you can creatively adapt to environments and meet with others and add value to organizations and the world that you're working in. But what we also find is that most employers are finding it a real struggle to find employees who have those soft skills. They lack them. So when they're looking from right through to the employment cycle of recruiting staff, right through to onboarding them and immersing them in organizational cultures, we're seeing a huge challenge that people have a misfit. They think that they're going to be able to rely on a discipline-specific knowledge, and that's no longer the case. And one of the biggest lessons you hear about careers of the future is recognizing that you do need to be more than your degree. We know that AI is replacing task-oriented roles, but that gives us an incredible opportunity to add value. And COVID-19 is changing how we work more than ever before. It hasn't stopped people working unless you're in Melbourne like we are in times of a short period of lockdown, but it certainly changes how we work. So some of the sectors that immediately I wanted to highlight are experiencing a short-term decline are sectors of retail, airlines, travel and transportation. These are sectors which are highly reliant on our discretionary expenditure. Things where it's much more around our obligatory or required spending, whether it's food, financial services, transportation. You're seeing that those are still really profitable sectors right now. But you would be very short-sighted to think about careers based on which sectors are recovering the fastest or longest, from COVID-19 and the worldwide financial implications and domino effects of so many economies slowing down. What you do need to think about is forget the sector and think about what you're going to curate in terms of a skill set to make you employable now and in the future. So some of the exciting things you hear about, and it's quite adept given it's Teachers' Day today, is the evolution of how teachers are embracing technology and teacher bots coming into careers for the future. That doesn't mean that we don't need teachers. We now need them more than ever. Parents are certainly getting a taste across the globe with remote learning of what it means to be a facilitator and an inspirer of learning. But how teachers can complement their skills and also use the advanced technology that's available to do some of the more mundane tasks or tasks that would have taken a lot more human effort is where we see artificial intelligence and business analytics coming into the learning analytics space to really drive that improvement in teaching performance. Data insights is something that I'm passionate about, given my background is marketing and branding. So much is not about how much data you can get your hands on, it's about the insight you draw from it and how it can inform your decisions. So whether you become a data detective or you end up being a broker in data insight, there's just a whole new sphere opening up for students in the areas that we would traditionally consider IT or purely data. If you go to areas like blockchain, you can do anything from being a UX UI designer right now to becoming an interface and a broker of blockchain facilitation in the future, whether it's 3D printing or cryptocurrency or drones. The kind of roles that are going to be emerging are anything from people with a specialist knowledge of security and how to adapt to that, those that have maybe a graphic design and visual design background immersing into those spaces. But we also see, as Brett mentioned, issues about geopolitical environments and security becoming much more prominent in the media. That's not a trend that's just emerged now. This has been happening for the last decade and we'll see into the future. So being able to be a modeler or an architect of biosecurity designs, being able to be a real futurist and start to think about the ethical implications of decisions. We're seeing a lot of people coming out of the arts areas as their undergraduate degrees, going into areas of real ethicist behavior and modeling. You can be anything from a meteorologist in space tech to being a marketer of the applications of space technology. So this just gives you a little bit of a taste of some of the emerging careers that we're hearing about now. But if you looked back 5 years ago, we would not have predicted what the careers were that were going to be top of mind today. So the last thing I want to end with is that so much about to be able to understand and embrace the careers of the future is to really develop that knowledge. Whatever you're investigating from credentialing, your past experience or micro-credentialing as you start to get into the workforce, is you need something that's a recognized statement, an insurance policy to fall back on and that's your education. But you curate so many experiences along the way. And I'm sure we'll hear from our Deakin student speak about what he's going to be doing beyond just studying is so important. Because employers are wanting people that have got a background, but they must have taken up every opportunity that's presented to them. And then they're developing the skills, because only one skill do you get out of a degree is around the discipline knowledge. The rest of it is very much what Ravneet and Brett mentioned. You need to be able to be creative regardless of what role you want to pursue in the future. You've got to have the ability to self-manage and be self-motivated, but also how do you work in a cross-cultural team? You've got to be able to communicate in multiple forms, whether it's in an email communication etiquette, or understanding how you do that in a personalized face-to-face environment or via Zoom. You've got to be able to understand business trends and industry trends and look at, well, maybe I'm looking to be an accountant or a lawyer, or maybe you're looking to the actual sectors that are growing. You might want to be an accountant in the fast-moving consumer goods, or you might want to be a sports physiotherapist who ends up working for a sports team. It's the third area that we're finding people really look for careers as those that are outside of their box. They didn't consider them. Never did I consider that I would end up being in education. I'm an absolute prime example of someone who looks at the opportunities presented to them and says, yeah, I'll give that a go. And you can reinvent yourself over time. So that amazing plethora of skills that you develop, I'm sure Ravneet will talk further about, is more important, those transferable skills, than anything else you can have in your career. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Kerry. I think that what you've covered is essentially very important for parents, teachers, and students to understand that careers will change, possibilities will emerge. There are life skills and there is knowledge that we have to build for now and for the future. And that is something that holistic education anywhere in the world, whether it is in Australia or India or anywhere else, is a very, very important investment into our now and tomorrow. All right, so I'm going to sort of move on to some questions now. Thank you, everyone. My first question really is to Brett. Brett, how is Australia preparing to accept international students in these COVID times? I mean, what do you think is really happening at the moment?
Thank you, Ravneet. Look, Australia, the priority for Australia, as it is with India, is to learn to manage with COVID-19. What we are doing at the moment is planning for pilots of the returns of students. So by pilot, I mean a small number of students in what we call a safe corridor, coming to directly to a particular city in Australia. People will have read perhaps the Northern Territory, Darwin, or Adelaide in South Australia, and go into 2 weeks of quarantine in Australia. I think would be, it's up to the states and the territories and the institutions, but I think the cost will be shared with the student, and then go to their institution where they would study in of course in COVID safe conditions. So there's what we're calling a secure corridor that's being established at the moment, and some of the pilots that are being spoken about, students would make their way to a hub, probably Singapore or probably Kuala Lumpur, and then get on a plane that's perhaps been chartered by an institution in the state or institutions in the state, and then come to Australia. But they're very small scale, and our Prime Minister has to approve them, and the health authorities in the states or the territories that are involved, and the Commonwealth government need to approve these as well. And just so those pilots then would demonstrate that and give the community the confidence that more students could come back, and then there would be a larger return probably in next year. And I might just finish on saying the difficulty with pilots involving students from India at the moment are probably the conditions that the Indian government has put on flights out of India, and also the issues with those hubs of Singapore and Kuala Lumpur and the countries that they're taking people from.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we obviously the cases in India are on the rise drastically. So I think, which is the reason why, we may see India on the list in the second half of the pilot run rather than in the first half of the pilot run.
Yes,
But I do know that, I mean, I think that Australia is one country, I think, that is extremely careful and cautious of how it looks after its international students. And I think that's a very important point to note for people who are listening to us today, that we could open Australia tomorrow and say anyone can come in, but the fact of the matter is that because health and safety is extremely important, not just of people in Australia, but people choosing to be in Australia from other parts of the world as well,
Yeah.
I think is a very, very important message from the Australian government and from the Australian community. So
that's right. And I think Kerry is an excellent example of that, where we thought that COVID-19 in Victoria was well under control, and then there was what we call the second outbreak, and Kerry, I think, is still in lockdown in Victoria, in Melbourne, which is tougher, as I understand it, than probably the lockdown is in India at the moment.
Yes, yes. Great. Gautam, let me get you to introduce yourself. I think there's some problem. Yeah, Gautam, are you there? I think he'd come back anyway. Let me move on to Kerry. Kerry, what do you think is the most important part when a student is choosing international education as a destination, and how does the pedagogy and curriculum development in universities help students for the future careers?
Well, so much of our choices about where to study is a lot to do with where to travel. And I'm the first to admit that if it's a fantastic destination, I will probably have visited it in the world. Australia, making the decision to come to Australia is as much about looking at not just the institution that you want to be studying at and what you want to study, but the environment that enables you to work, get lots of work experience while you're there. As having a safe place, I think, is critically important. I do not intend to send my daughter off around the world unless I know it's safe. So where you study needs to feel like you have got a network of people around you, that you're not on your own. And I think the South Asia community in Melbourne and Victoria is one of the strongest in the world. I think that you've got to look at what the institution that you're going to is providing in terms of return on investment. So much about where you study should be what kind of experience are you going to have? Are they at the top of their field for the experience of study? Whether that is for our students, and you'll hear from one of our students shortly when he can jump back online, but you might start by studying wholly online because of the environment we're in. That doesn't mean you miss out or there's any less experience. It's probably one of the best Netflix quality experiences you'll ever have in education. But where you do want to see value is, where are the graduates from those institutions going? What is the return on investment for your study? Are you going to be at the top of your game to get a job out of this? Because I, for one, do not believe that students should be just making a decision solely based on a brand name alone, without looking really closely at the facts around, am I going to be able to find a role after this? And what kind of career services does that institution offer you? Do they start in year one? And that's something in the curriculum that we absolutely wholeheartedly embrace at Deakin. From the appointment of the first Pro-Vice Chancellor for any Australian university, to have someone responsible for graduate employment. And that means employability skills that you learn in your curriculum, right through to graduate employment and being an employment service. You need to develop the skills to understand your employability and your digital footprint, your personal brand, what experiences both internationally and domestically you need to undertake to position yourself best for the job market.
Fantastic. I think you're totally right, Kerry, that at the end of the day, employability skills and employability opportunities come along in different forms as you go into the future. But to make sure that the employability skills are embedded into the curriculum, and the pedagogy actually lets students holistically learn the knowledge and be able to use that knowledge into their life, I think is a more important part of as we go forward into different times. Brett, my question to you is, what do you think you would say about Australia if you were to say why would students choose Australia? I mean, how multicultural do you think it is? What's the lifestyle like for a typical student, say, from India?
Thank you very much, Ravneet. Look, what can I say? It's you know, I think it's reasonable to say no country's perfect. No country has this down pat. But Australia is a democracy like India. Our leaders, our people are extremely close. There's all sorts of variety in Australia, both in terms, you talked about the cultural aspect of it. We have Indigenous Australians, 60,000 years of culture here in Australia. Then we have people from India, you know, who may come in January or early next year. There are gosh, I couldn't tell you how people from how many different countries, but people from every continent in the world are here. Indian students, if they come to Australia, whilst they have the comfort of there's 100,000 other Indian students studying here, but Australia is so big and so vast that you could be amongst people of your own culture, or you could be totally independent. You could study in a city, you could study in a regional campus in Australia. Kerry mentioned work before. Australia has work rights. You can work as a student whilst you're here in Australia. There are post-study work rights. Once you've graduated from Australia, you can stay for added doing university degree, 18 months or so on a vocation.
Yes, great. I think there is some problem with your connection, Brett, but thank you for answering that question really nicely. There are work opportunities, part-time and full-time, and there is post-study work rights as well. So students can stay back after they finish their education, which gives them the chance to think about working in Australia after they finish their education. We've got a student back here. I think you had some connection problems. So Gautam,
Yes.
Gautam, tell us about yourself. What are you studying, and how's your experience so far?
Yeah, so I'm studying the course called Exercise and Sports Science, and it's been around 2 months now since I started the course. At first, I was very confused as to how this online cloud campus thing is going to work out, but honestly, it's been pretty good actually. Like my studying experience, education-wise, interaction with the faculty, interaction with other students even. I thought we wouldn't probably be so interactive and the classes won't be so attentive, but we made and pushed to talk to people, communicate with people, discuss problems. So the overall experience is, I would rather study in Melbourne, Deakin campus, but honestly, the online thing has been nothing short of excellence, right? I think, yeah.
Where are you right now as we speak to you, Gautam? You're in Pune.
I'm in Pune right now, ma'am. Pune, Maharashtra, yeah.
Okay, so tell me, you know, what do you need to study online? What is the equipment, or what is the bandwidth that you need to be able to study online? I mean, do you need anything separate that you have already, or how does it work for you?
So all you need is a laptop and decent internet connection for you to attend classes, because nothing else other than what you normally find in your house. I had my laptop and internet. So you don't need anything too extraordinary to attend classes. It is just like a normal day at home, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. And what time do you have? Do you have your classes regularly every day, or how does it work? What's your schedule?
I have 4 days a week, ma'am. Yeah, that's my class schedule. 4 days a week.
And couple of hours every day?
Yeah, 3 to 4 hours.
And you are able to interact with students that are studying from other parts of the world?
Yeah, so during classes, we go to classes in something called Blackboard room, and there's something called a breakout room where they make you go into small groups of say 3 or 4 students, where where you're supposed to discuss the questions they have given you, and come up with different type of answers. for the same question, and you're given a chance to talk to people, and that's when the teachers aren't around, so you can be a little more free, I guess, more comfortable with other students. Yeah.
Okay, great. Kerry, just coming back to you on the possible careers that are going to change. I mean, traditionally, you know, the MBAs had its time, and then you had medical education, engineering education. With this ever-changing scope of education and careers coming, how do you get parents and students to know that they are investing into a futuristic approach of, you know, education that is going to give them careers that will matter in the future?
I think that there's not a lot of high risk when it comes to higher education. That's the one thing you can say about it. Statistically, we know that it grows economies and it grows the world. But what we do know is that certain careers, and I'm one that absolutely loves the creative arts, but it is much more challenging to find consistent work to get one job. And it is much more about understanding that if you are entering into the creative industries, that you may be doing multiple roles. So the gig economy is becoming much more important. But traditional roles, traditional careers and disciplines, whether it's from marketing to psychology to even the value of an MBA, still has currency. It's the skills you learn through them. So I suppose for parents, it's around, you know, doing your homework around whether you have confidence in the graduate outcomes for that particular degree that you're thinking with your child to study. But the biggest mistake you could do is actually thinking that that's going to predict the future, because it's not. We know that you take yourself on that employment journey. So as long as students are doing something that they're really passionate about, they're going to do better in. And I think, Gotham, you must love exercise and sports science. It's one of probably Deacon's most popular areas to work in. But so often we see students come out and then want to, if you do need to be in a management position, it's recognizing that, hey, you might do an MBA or a Masters of Commerce or a Masters of Business Analytics next, to really grow with yourself over time as you're looking to change careers.
Yeah, yeah. No, absolutely. And there's a question from a parent, Mr. Gaurav Malhotra, who wants to know what's the best bet for the future. I think Kerry has answered your question in some form. But I'd like to add and say that the best bet in the future is high quality education. And I think looking at the future with technology embedded into it, use of technology is going to be a very integral part of our lives. So I think that whether you look at business analytics or you know, how AI is going to impact our future, if it's a technical degree, if it's a business degree, then you start thinking about things like digital marketing and data-driven marketing. I think these are the newer forms of the same thing but put into a different form. And I think that is where the issue for parents to think about is combination of sort of digital with the domain area. Brett, just before we wind up, we are running short of time. I'd just like to say any last words from you right now to the team that's listening to us, your message to parents and students.
Yes, thank you. And I think career of the future is reliable technology, as we've just seen. I want to tell parents, I think, firstly, that as far as we possibly can, we would look after your sons and daughters as we would want you to look after ours. You know, we're very serious about that, and we have laws and regulations and codes in place to look after your sons and daughters. To the students who might wish to come to Australia, I want to say this is a fantastic place, a great lifestyle: sun, snow, warm, cold, mountains, beaches. shopping. And if you're feeling homesick, as I said, there's a large Indian population, and myself, because I'm such a fan of I Love Your Country. I was at the local Indian supermarket, local Indian store, buying some Mysore soap last night, and my local spice supplies. I'm not sure what it is, but Australians seem to identify very strongly with people from India. We love people from India. We're fascinated by your diversity, and please come. We want to have you here in our home. Thank you.
Thank you, Brett. Kerry?
I would definitely agree that so much of the Australian environment is a multicultural diaspora in its own right. My children, now I've got a 14 and a 16-year-old, and they've grown up eating a Malaysian curry, an Indian curry, Italian lasagna, a Chinese fried rice. There's no one cuisine here. And I think that's when I talk to Indian students who I've met 4 years ago in Chandigarh, who are some of the closest relationships I'll ever have as an educator is with some of my students, is they talk about the food, they talk about the coffee, they talk about the love of the social life and their ability to interact with their lecturers and the staff at Deakin particularly in a really warm and embracing way. And I think that's reflective of the culture that is in Australia. It's very inclusive. Yes, we absolutely respect diversity of opinions and argue, and the local politics at that moment is definitely one that's up for arguments, but it's about respecting the differences, but also seeing the similarities across the world. And I think that's what, for me, that's what's kept me based in Australia, is because it is so accepting of the diversity of cultures and embraces those from our first people right through to we've got one of the biggest Mauritian populations outside of Mauritius. Like, it's just incredible that we've got this environment that fosters that.
Yeah. Now, I totally agree with you. My association with Australia is 25 years old, and I totally can say that I love working with Australians. They're so accepting and also so engaging and very, very friendly and very easy to deal with. So I think we've got common grounds there. So Gautam, what would you like to say to your colleagues and parents and teachers who are listening to you?
Honestly, I would say that it has been a wonderful experience till now in Deakin University. Even before I joined, they were very helpful with the whole admission process, with how difficult, despite how difficult the visa process could be. Deakin University has been hand in hand with me, constantly in contact with me with the whole education admission process and with the visa process. So I'd say this would be a wonderful experience. As a student, I can guarantee that, because vouch for it, definitely.
Thank you very much. And like I say, that every student is very important to us, because we are building careers and we are building lives. And I think that each one of the students that choose Deakin University will get that experience from the staff here and in Australia. So thank you, everyone. We're just going to wind up the session now. Thank you for attending this session with us, and thank you for your interest in Deakin University. Thank you to Brett. Sorry to take away time on a Saturday, but thank you for being so helpful and wonderful. To my friend Kerry, thank you so much, as always, for such an insightful, thought-provoking thought that we can leave the parents with about careers of the future. And to the parents, thank you for listening to us. If you have any questions or any queries, or to the students, you've got our email, you've got our phone number. Please be in touch with us, and we are more than happy to talk to you one-on-one as we go into the future. To our host schools, thank you so much for hosting us. Thank you so much for giving us a chance to work more closely with you. And to my staff, thank you again for all the hard work. Thank you, Gautam. Look after yourself, everyone. Be safe. Good luck, and we'll see you soon. Thank you.